ask all the speakers and all the expert panelists if we can hang around at the end of this workshop just outside for 10 minutes or so that people can come and ask questions, because we had a few technical issues and we started a little bit late, so we are already up against it in terms of time. What I'd like to do now is move on to the second session, which is where we're going to hear from some of the folks who are actually doing this stuff at the coalface, actually doing EBA in the field and really trying to build the evidence base by doing that. First speaker here is Ricky Nunes, who is the Marine Director for CI Philippines, and he's going to be talking about implementing EBA in the Philippines, South Africa, and Brazil. Ricky, thank you.
Thank you, David. Good morning. I'm glad that I was given this opportunity to share with you our experience on ecosystem-based adaptation approaches to climate change adaptation in the Philippines, which is funded by the International Climate Initiative of the German Federal Ministry of Environment, Nature, and Nuclear Safety. Well, just to give you a background, the Philippines is one of the 17 top megadiversity countries in the world. And the Philippines ranks third in the list of countries most vulnerable to climate change. A report by the United Nations Universities Institute of Environment and Human Security and the German Alliance of Development Work said recently. Given that context, therefore it is critical also for our partners in the Philippines, from the local government, community partners, and the national government agencies to take urgent steps to address the issues. And one approach that CI has initiated together with our local partners is the ecosystem-based adaptation approach to climate change adaptation. And since climate change is a growing concern in the Philippines, and while we have a national climate change policy and a national climate and a national institution working on this, which is the National Climate Change Commission, we at CI have to build the evidence base for the effectiveness of EBA and to be able to share the lessons to our partners in government. Okay, CI's project covers terrestrial, marine, and coastal regions, and the objectives of our project is to identify and implement ecosystem-based adaptation activities in 3 diverse settings, one in South Africa, Brazil, and the Philippines. And second is to increase the resilience and adaptive capacity of vulnerable people to climate change. In South Africa, in the Namaqualand, which is a communal area and has an arid succulent belt, it faces hotter, drier, and less predictable climate, and key EBA activities to be implemented are belt restoration, wetland restoration, and policy engagement. In Brazil, we will implement EBA through a tropical forest and marine interface. The region is particularly, the focus of this region is the southern Bahia Brolhos region, which encompasses some of the threatened Atlantic forest and a biodiversity rich coral reef area. So this is the area where we're going to implement EBA in Brazil. And currently they are still undertaking their vulnerability assessment. In the Philippines, we are implementing the ecosystem-based adaptation project in the Verde Island Passage, and the Verde Island Passage is considered a priority marine biodiversity conservation corridor in the Sulu-Sulawesi seascape, and it's part of the Coral Triangle. And as you know, the Coral Triangle is called also the Amazon of the seas because of its rich coastal and marine ecosystem. And the Verde Island Passage is roughly around 1.14 million hectares, covers 5 provinces, 33 municipalities, coastal municipalities, and you have a rapidly increasing population, and livelihoods are affected because of the vulnerabilities that are being faced by the communities in the area. It's a top tourist destination. It's also considered a major fishing ground. And it's also called the center of marine diversity because in 2006, Ken Carpenter and Victor Springer, through a study that they did over the last 10 years, consider this as the center of marine biodiversity in the world. The Philippines EBA project, the objective of which is to secure the coastline and increase coastal resilience to storm surges, flooding, and erosion through mangrove restoration and protection. So we have identified 2 pilot mangrove restoration sites in the Verde Island Passage where we will be both enhancing the current mangrove cover, and in some areas we will have to do reforestation using mangrove species and mangrove associates such as beech forest species that we need to plant in the area. Second, we will build the resilience and adaptive capacity of fisheries and related livelihoods in the region. We are currently conducting the fisheries vulnerability assessment of the region, and hopefully before the end of this year we will be able to identify adaptation options for our fisheries sector. The way we do our work in the Philippines, particularly on EBA, is that we build on our current initiatives, particularly on marine protected area and marine protected area network establishment, including our current mangrove forest conservation areas in the Verde Island Passage. If you could see in the map, we have a lot of MPA sites in the area, and in this map over here on the right, this is considered as a climate smart MPA because of the way it was designed, taking into consideration some of the climate vulnerabilities in the island. So, how do we build on the evidence base? These are the key project elements: systematic vulnerability analysis of people and ecosystem. We will have to develop the theories of change, gather socioeconomic baseline, develop the vulnerability index, evaluate cost effectiveness, and engage local, national, and international policymakers. In the Philippines, we already did, in 2009, we finished the vulnerability assessment. It's a region-wide vulnerability assessment. However, currently, some municipalities within the VIP are also conducting a municipal level vulnerability assessment because this vulnerability assessment covers the entire VIP. And one of the recommendations of that assessment is to restore mangroves to increase coastal resilience. And that is the reason why we're implementing EBA in the area. And in doing the vulnerability assessment, we try to identify both the ecological vulnerability of fish, coral, mangroves, and seagrasses, and human vulnerabilities, particularly those who are involved in fisheries, in the tourism sector. We look at forestry development, human health, and food security, and 3 exposures that we have seen that we try to analyze, particularly the sea surface temperature, increase in sea level rise, and increased storm frequency in the area. And this is the map that we prepared, which we provided to our partners, local government, and even to the communities, and those that are marked in red are those that are highly vulnerable. Okay, if you look at the map down below, you will see the extent of the storm going through the Verde Island Passage, and year after year we experience huge storms, and I guess you're familiar with the recent typhoon and flooding that occurred in Manila and in nearby provinces. Okay, we're also doing the theories. Theories of change is an approach to program planning and evaluation that maps the relationship between the long-term goal and intermediate and early changes required to bring it about. So we're doing theories of change. We uses evidence to link intended outcomes with activities being implemented. So these are the things we're doing. We have done socioeconomic. We set a baseline. We developed the vulnerability index. Sorry, I think I'm running out of time.
2 minutes.
Yeah, we're currently doing the cost effectiveness, and eventually what we want to see is how effective our intervention would be. We're engaging policymakers and building partnerships and stakeholder support. And as we engage stakeholders, these are some of the photographs that I want to show you. Capacity building, we are building capacities on coastal resource management, mangrove management, enforcement, NPA management, effectiveness, livelihoods, and income diversification. Okay, these are the important slides. Key challenges, we need to quantify the adaptation service. Just how much can mangrove restoration reduce vulnerability? Second is adaptation initiative sustainable under global change. How do you project expected project benefits of the adaptation initiative beyond the project lifetime? How do you go about robustly valuing the adaptation service and co-benefits? What institutions and policies and at what scales are needed to ensure successful EBA? How will the EBA initiative be sustained by LGUs and communities? These are governance issues, politics, and land tenure issues that we have to face with. We need to understand the broader vulnerability adaptation context, and we realize that no project can address all vulnerabilities. We also realize that we need a robust M&E to assess effectiveness, understand the context and needs, tracking underlying assumptions, gathering and sharing information, enabling adaptive management, and meeting transparency and reporting requirements. So, what take-home message for this is we realize as we implement over the last almost 2 years now that there's potential for ecosystem to help people adapt. There's also critical need to build, however, there's a critical need to build the evidence base. Many tools and approaches are already available. We realize also that there's need for M&E, which is very, very key in our work. We need sustained capacity building on climate change and EBA. Governance and partnerships are very, very essential. And as we go along, we're learning by doing. So that's the experience in the Philippines, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ricky. Again, after all four speakers have spoken, we will have just a small amount of time for questions then. So again, you can set your hands and keep the questions in your brain. I'd like to welcome Keith Allison from UNEP, and he's going to be talking about ecosystem-based adaptation in mountain ecosystems, challenges and opportunities in Nepal, Peru, and Uganda.
All this loads. You're already loaded. Okay. It would have been nice, and given how I see the workshop is now structured, we have our teams here. For example, the people on the ground in Uganda putting in place this project are here and at the meeting. So I'm going to give more of a broad overview, and I would encourage you to come up to me afterwards if you want more hands-on field information, and I can put you in touch with some of the folks that are here at the meeting. This is a EBA project in mountain ecosystems targeting Nepal, Peru, and Uganda, which UNEP is doing in cooperation with IUCN and UNDP, funded by the DMU. So the project objectives are pretty clear, as we've already seen in previous presentations, both to strengthen the resilience of mountain ecosystems and also to use that resilience, number two, to reduce the vulnerability of local communities to climate change impacts, and to use these 3 case studies to draw some lessons for mountain ecosystems in general. The project has 4 components. I'll talk a little about the first one because that's the one which we're farthest along on, at least at UNEP, development of methodologies and tools for mountain ecosystem EBA work. We then are trying to apply these tools and methodologies at the national level. That's being done with UNEP and UNDP, and to mainstream these into government. Implementing pilots in these ecosystems, that's being done both by UNDP and IUCN on the ground at the country level. And then finally, formulation of national policies, building the economic case for this kind of EBA work at the national level and mainstreaming this type of work into national and local adaptation policies, planning projects. UNDP is taking over that component. So obviously starting out with assessments and knowledge sharing, very much focusing on the site-specific nature of such work, assessments of biodiversity of ecosystems in these regions, of vulnerability, knowledge sharing through networks, and piloting. There's also capacity building and demonstration activities as part of the project, assessing technology needs, cost benefits, capacity building across a wide range of actors in the region, so including government agencies, not just environment ministries, but different planning and finance ministries, etc., civil society, local communities. And then, as I mentioned already, integrating this into national and governmental plans and policies for sustainability reasons. Again, working with a broad set of stakeholders. I want to talk then a little bit in detail about decision support framework, which we've been developing in UNEP with a whole range of partners. Basically a cookbook on trying to take a look at your adaptation needs and then have a way for practitioners to think about how ecosystem-based approaches might make an effective component of your adaptation work, whatever it may be, across a suite of ecosystems. And we're using this in a trial phase right now and trying to bring it into some of our UNEP Jeff work on adaptation as well as this mountain work. So it's a practical EBA decision support framework which helps practitioners address these three questions. How do you balance EBA against other adaptation options? And I can't help reiterating my question earlier. You know, it's very good. Monitoring and evaluation is very important, and I don't want to deny that. But we have to be a little careful about shooting ourselves in the foot as EBA practitioners if we don't apply the same kind of lessons to other aspects of adaptation. For example, seawalls. Right now, UNEP has a $5 million project in Tanzania rehabilitating a seawall in Dar es Salaam, so that's expensive. It's going to be, it's with a fellow partner redoing it. Did someone monitor and evaluate that over the long term? You also look at the effectiveness of seawalls in Japan, in the tsunami. That was a tragic occurrence where people actually went on top of them to go view the tsunami coming in because they had developed a false sense of security. So there are a lot of questions about hard infrastructure adaptation measures as well. So that's an aside, but I just wanted to reiterate. Anyway, B, how to plan and design the most appropriate EBA option in context specific, in a context-specific way. And then, as I already just had my diatribe about how to evaluate the effectiveness of these long-term adaptation measures. EBA in particular operates over long time scales. Those of you who may have planted a tree to help offset your carbon footprint when you flew here, keep in mind that takes 50 years at least for that tree to offset your carbon. And you've got to monitor it, you've got to look at the long term. The same thing is true in adaptation. So we're really shackled by having funding streams of 3 to 5 years for projects we put in place, and then we label mission accomplished without the ability to look at the long term. Are these things really effective? So some of the key objectives of this DSF. It's been framed to consider EBA along with and integrated with other types of adaptation, recognizing fully that in some cases, as I mentioned, Dar es Salaam, the port there, the mangroves aren't going to be very effective. We have a seawall option, but how can it complement these other options? The context-specific nature I've already talked about, as have previous speakers, extremely important. How do we enable decision-making which will incorporate whole range of ecosystem service, given the difficulty we have quantifying these. Others have sort of highlighted the need to quantify everything. So sometimes you just, as you do with climate forecasts, recognize uncertainty and work forward in the uncertain context, qualitative way. Building on M&E, I've already talked about. Proactive, and this was already mentioned by a previous speaker, this decision support framework advocates for and helps practitioners to ensure that monitoring and evaluation needs are built into the project design at the beginning, built in at the beginning, in place for the duration of the project, and then a longer term as well. So here's just a brief sketch of what it is. We already heard the word adapted. If you can go around this circle any way you want, but you set your adaptive context. Have a look at the tool helps you look at your system, what it's being used for, what are the management concerns, what are the adaptation goals. Moving from that to selecting appropriate options, EBA approaches when possible or as an integrated part of a broader adaptation approach. moves them from designing for change, we already heard about that as well in previous talk, how to implement measures, how to know if they're effective, and then the strong importance of adaptation, of adaptive measures, changing as things go on. So this is the product. It targets sort of practitioners and planners at the local level, and we're bringing this online in several UNEP projects. So conclusions on that particular, let me move on. In terms of the EBA and mountain work, we have a few publications now. We're releasing a policy brief in, hopefully in Doha, which is advocating for EBA at a more political level, so targeting points of contact with UNFCCC. So this is sort of a complementary, very different audience from the decision support framework tool I mentioned a minute ago. These are all produced as part of the partnership. There is a website out there for those of you who would like further information. It's early days on the website. We've only just put it up, but it's up and running, and we'll be filling it with results from the project as time goes on. And then just to mention what's up for the future. At UNEP, we're helping the UNFCCC. You know, they have called for an EBA technical workshop